Today on Searching for History, we're at Fort Steilacoom. Fort Steilacoom was established on this site in August of 1849, and it was closed in April of 1868. Just behind me here is the parade grounds and the officers' quarters.
In May of 1849, an Indian attack took place at the nearby Hudson's Bay Company's Fort Nisqually, and the result, in August of 1849, the United States Army built Fort Steilacoom. The fort was established on the Joseph Heath Farm, and the land was leased from the Hudson's Bay Company.
It was one of the first military fortifications built by the United States north of the Columbia River in what would become Washington State.
Behind me here are 4 of the officer houses. We're going to go take a closer look at them. So this is the Major Haller House. So they have them furnished. It looks like
I like that rocking chair back there.
it's era-appropriate furnishings. You can see dishes back there, like transfer print and decal ware.
This is a historical marker to the Heath Farm. It commemorates Joseph Thomas Heath. He was born in 1804 in Exeter, England. Joseph Heath leased the land from the Hudson's Bay Company, and this is also where Fort Steilacoom was built. Joseph Heath died at age 44 and is buried in an unmarked grave at Fort Nisqually.
Lieutenant Colonel Silas Casey's house. Fort Steilacoom was established in August 1849 by the United States Army to reinforce the American presence in the Oregon Territory. In addition to providing security, the military garrison also played a major role in the legal, social, and economic development of the region. The 4 remaining buildings are the oldest group west of the Cascades. Although abandoned by the Army in 1868, these buildings have continued to serve the community. So this is just a meeting room. So this one isn't actually set up as a historic building.
They're still using it as a regular
Yeah, there's
building.
like folding tables and a projector screen inside there.
Yeah.
Oh, this room is set up historical. There's a fireplace in there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, somewhat anyway. The table and chairs in there, though, look more
A little bit
mid-century modern.
more modern, yeah.
There's a lot more here than I thought, actually. Fort Steilacoom was established on this site August 24th, 1849 by Company M, 1st United States Artillery, commanded by Captain Bennett H. Hill. This monument is dedicated to all soldiers who served at Fort Steilacoom. Let's look at this 3rd officer's quarters and see if we can look in the windows. This one's definitely set up with a historical theme going. Lieutenant E.J. Harvey and Lieutenant Arthur Schaaf. Oh, look, a store. That's pretty cool. There's stoneware back there and jugs, tin cans. So this is the 4th officers' quarters. This actually looks more like a museum than this one. Oh yeah, you can see the original layout of the fort.
This is an affiliate member of the Washington State Historical Society.
Okay, so it is a little museum. We'll have to try to come here sometime when it's open.
This is their sign that says Fort Steilacoom has been listed in the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of the Interior.
They have a couple Napoleon cannons here. Let's go take a closer look at them. This Napoleon cannon was used in the Civil War, cast by the Revere Copper Company in Boston, Massachusetts in 1853. This cannon has a 4.62-inch bore, the same as when new, indicating that it was probably used very little. It was ordered by the North on August 26, 1863, and inspected by the Ordnance Officer Thomas J. Rodman. The barrel weighs 1,220 pounds. This second Napoleon cannon was used in the Civil War. It was cast by Henry N. Hooper and Company in Boston, Massachusetts, 1862. This cannon has a 5-inch bore and a house's seat on top of the breech for a pendulum sight. The gun was ordered by the North on September 8, 1862, and inspected by the Ordnance Officer Thomas J. Rodman. The barrel weighs 1,220 pounds. Not really sure what they were talking about, this house seat on top of the breech for a pendulum. Huh. I'm no cannon expert, so I don't know. The only difference I see is this has a really small hole here, which I think is how a fuse would be here, or somehow you would light the powder, cause the explosion. And this one has a far larger hole, but I don't know. If anyone understands cannon technology and terminology, let us know in the comments below. Here's another marker commemorating Fort Steilacoom. So it says, in August of 1849, Captain Bennett Hill and 23 soldiers of Company M, 1st U.S. Artillery Regiment arrived and leased 20 acres of the former Heath Farm from the Hudson's Bay Company. Apparently there were buildings here that they utilized and converted, initially as they created the fort. So the field you see right here would have been the parade ground.
The fort was the headquarters of the U.S. 9th Infantry Regiment during the 1855 to 56 Indian War, but there were no hostilities at the fort. We recently made a video on the 1855 to 1856 Indian Wars. Click here to watch it. 4 cottages remain on the site and make up Fort Steilacoom's Living History Museum.
In 1871, Washington Territory repurposed the fort into an insane asylum. Today, Fort Steilacoom is the Western State Mental Hospital. So right here is a marker that commemorates the Nisqually Chief Leschi. This marker here, it talks about the 1855-56 Indian War and how Chief Leschi was tried and found guilty of murder and then hung not too far from here. If you want to know more about the 1855 to 1856 Indian War, you should take a look at the video we made. I just noticed this historical marker that's across the street from Fort Steilacoom. Let's go take a closer look at it. Supplementing the appropriation made by Congress, citizens helped build the military road through Natchez Pass to Walla Walla, 1853. This is kind of hard to read, but in 1857, Congress appropriated $35,000 for the military road from Steilacoom to Bellingham. In 1852, Congress appropriated $20,000 for a military road from Fort Steilacoom to Fort Walla Walla, and the road was made passable in 1853. So apparently in the 1850s, Fort Steilacoom was kind of the hub of civilization around here, and military roads were built going north to Bellingham and east across Natchez Pass, across the Cascades, all the way as far as Walla Walla. Well, it wouldn't be a Searching for History video if we didn't go to a cemetery. And I think the final thing to talk about for Fort Steilacoom is the Fort Cemetery. We read that the cemetery was originally used by the fort, but then in 1876, when the fort became an insane asylum, the cemetery was then used by the asylum. In the 1890s, all the military burials were relocated to a national cemetery in San Francisco. But there are still civilian burials here from that early pioneer era. So right here's a marker for the Western State Hospital Historical Cemetery. So it says here 1876 to 1953, over 3,200 psychiatric patients in the Western State Hospital were buried here. And then the graves are marked with numbers for privacy reasons. Well, I'm seeing grave markers for people that died in the hospital, from the insane asylum and later Western State Mental Hospital. I'm not seeing anything civilians from the era of the fort. But we'll look around a little bit and see if we can find something. We're not seeing any grave markers for civilians that were around here in the time of the fort. And I'm thinking maybe that's because they were wooden markers and they just didn't survive. Well, Erin, what do you think of Fort Steilacoom?
It's really interesting. I like that there's still a few of the officers' cottages that you could see. It's interesting that the cemetery is here. Yet again, we find ourselves in a historical cemetery.
There really isn't a lot left of Fort Steilacoom. When you think of going to Fort Nisqually or Fort Vancouver, the other forts around here, there's really something substantial to see, a wall around the fort and all the buildings inside. But I think if you're in the Lakewood area or if you're visiting Steilacoom, it's worth coming over here and just taking a quick look at Fort Steilacoom. And if you can time when the actual Living History Museum is open, and we're not quite sure when that is, that would probably be when you would want to go.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see inside those cottages.
Well, that's our video on Fort Steilacoom. I hope you enjoyed it.
Don't forget to like, share, comment on this video, and please subscribe to Searching for History. Thanks for watching.
There's actually more people buried here than I realized. Look at the number of graves.